The number one question I would get is, hey, Jack, when I pull up to the stoplight and someone has a sign, what am I
Mm,
supposed to do? Number one question, without just absolutely. And my answer to them was, I understand. I understand why you're asking me that question. That question is driven by guilt. You see someone who you perceive to have less than you, and you feel compassion or empathy. And so you're like, what do I do? Right. And so the answer to your question is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you stop and give them $5 or if you just ignore them. I say that and it sounds like I'm being not compassionate. But the truth of the matter is that when you are at that light, regardless of what you do, you are not going to change their long-term situation. You're not engaged long enough. What you're doing is you're placating your own guilt. You are doing
mhm.
something to assuage your own guilt. And that's okay. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying realize where it's coming from. But you can do what I do. And I do this today. If I see somebody on the street corner and I'm pull up in my car and the light is turned red, I roll my window down and I say, hey, what's your name? They look at me and I'm like, yeah, what's your name? And maybe they give you the street name of Candy or Sugar or Caveman or Cowboy. They all have street names to protect themselves. I say, no,
Mm,
no, 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 no. My name's Jack. What's your name? More often than not, they tell me Thomas. I'm like, hi, Thomas. It's nice to meet you. Try to have a safe day. If you don't know what to do, go to the rescue mission. They can help with food, clothing, shelter. Just
mm,
go there. Take a step. About then, the light's going to change, right? And you can say, take care, Thomas. Roll your window up. Look in the rearview mirror. They're staring at your car. Here's why. For the most part, people on the street, no one ever asks them their name, ever.
mm.
In fact, they haven't said their real name maybe in years. They haven't said their real name out loud. They've been Caveman and not Thomas. This is the first step, and it's a transaction because people on the street they feel out of control. They're not in control of anything. And all of a sudden, you're giving them the opportunity to be in control of something, to be in a conversation, in a transactional conversation. I gave you something, I gave you my name, and you're going to do something back. Maybe you're going to give me your name. And that transaction is equals because whose name is better, Jack or Thomas? They're the same. And so you've created a moment of equality with someone who rarely feels like they are equal to anything. That's a very powerful moment. The first one is transactions. The second is incentivization. You get more of what you incentivize. So back to the street corner. If I give somebody $5 on the street corner, let's just say that they are out there and they get $50 that day. 10 people give them $5. The next morning, when they wake up and they're like, I would like more money and some stuff, what do you think they're going to do?
More of what worked for them.
Exactly. They're going to go right back to that street corner. Instead, so they're going to get a measly $5 from you. When if they went to a service provider like a rescue mission, they would get help. They would get real help. Maybe help for the voices in their head. Maybe help for the addiction that is keeping them from thriving at all. Maybe help from the abuse that they're experiencing on the street, particularly for women. Women on the street, it is nothing short of horrific.
Yeah.
So getting them to not be incentivized to go to the street corner, but to go somewhere else for help is important. The third one is partnerships. There is no service provider that can solve all the problems. There is not one that's an easy button. Remember I said that there's 1,000 stories for 1,000 homeless people? You have to figure out where does the help come from?
Mm,
And it comes from a variety of different places. It could be that the initial place is the rescue mission for someone, but maybe they've got kids and maybe your rescue mission doesn't support children. It's a different problem set than adult homeless.
mm.
But maybe there is something in town that does that for children.
Yeah.
Salvation Army, something else. You need to have partnerships as the rescue mission or the service provider to empower those other organizations to work with you.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult. Now, most rescue missions are gospel oriented. And there's a lot of organizations out there that do not like the idea of a gospel rescue mission. They like the idea of the rescue mission. They just don't like the gospel part.
Yeah.
And so I would meet people who were trying to support homeless people and say, why don't you work with us? Jack, I like what you guys do, but that whole faith thing is just not for me and my
Mm,
organization. Okay, let me ask you this question. Do you think people have worth? 100% of the time, people say yes. I say, you know what? I agree with you. Now, we can debate on where we think that worth comes from. I will tell you that I firmly believe it comes from the fact that the creator of the universe chose to die for just you. If there had been no one else on the planet, that creator chose to die for just you. Same for that homeless person. That's where I think their worth comes from. So I have a pretty high bar for this. Now, you may come up with another reason that you believe they have worth. I will not challenge that. Instead, let's just agree that they have worth. Can we do something together for someone who has worth? Almost always. People are like, Jack, when you phrase it that way, I think we can try. When we try together, guess what happens? They look at us and say, you know what? You gospel people aren't so bad. And I say to them, you know what? You're not so bad either. Let's see more of this.
Yeah.
It's those three things together. And I could go into all kinds of detail about this, but that's what our book was about.
Okay. So tell people about the book. If they want to dive in deeper, what's the name of it? How do they get
It's
it?
called Meeting Homelessness with Hope. And there's a box full of them just over my lips, my left shoulder right there. I won't go grab it, but it's on Amazon, Jack Briggs, and you'll see it on there. And it describes just these things that I just talked about. And we tried to be as truthful as possible about the statistics and what seems to work and what doesn't work, because there are a lot of stories out there that are just not true. They're driven by virtue, like empathy, but they're not true. They don't help the way people think they would, because they don't understand the dynamic of someone who is in extreme poverty or extreme addiction or extreme abuse. They just don't get it.
So how do we help people to see the inner homeless person in themselves that they're not seeing?
Very true that in a lot of cases, you are one or two catastrophic disasters away from not having anything. Like I said, having that moment of equality with someone who's on the street is myth shattering. I have seen it happen more than you can, more than you can imagine. Someone's on the street. They're acting a little crazy. They're loud, or they're rocking back and forth, or they've got a sign and they're doing all of this stuff. And I look at them in the eye and I say, "What's your name?" And they look at me and "Yeah, my name's Jack. What's your name?" All of that disappears. Their tone changes, their demeanor changes, their willingness to say something to you that's not crazy changes, because all of a sudden they are being seen by someone as a person. And if that reflected energy doesn't come back to you, I don't know who you are, because that positive reflected energy will help you understand that it's more complicated than just the $5 a water bottle that you're going to give them.
Yeah.
Something beyond that.
And I think for you, there's also the dynamic, which is you don't want to just placate yourself and make yourself feel better. You want to actually solve the problem.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. There are some folks, no, there's a virtue to it that they enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So
I like
So
them
I
as
think
builders.
they can feel good about giving money to you to help to actually solve the problem.
Exactly.
So on that note, like when you think about living better, that's I feel like there's a foundation there to kind of inspire the answer to that question.
What is living better? Living better. That's what you're asking me, is what is living better?
Yeah.
I think it's a life of integrity. And when I mean integrity here, it's not just saying the truth and, living that. Integrity is a word that comes from being integrated, an integer. And what that is a whole number. It's a whole, right? There's no fractions. It's an integer. It's integrated. It's whole. And how do we build an integrated life? I think it really starts off with having some spiritual element. I think you have to have physical integrity. I think you have to have emotional integrity. And I think you have to have relational integrity. I think all four of those are required to be integrated. You can have an emphasis in one of those four, but if any of the four are lacking, you are not integrated. And that creates a tough life.
Well, how do you feel about me using the word that if you're not whole in one of those areas, that part of you is corrupting?
It can be. It can be. So physical health could be prayerfully considering a better life. You could feel dominant in your emotional roles in life. You could even have some relationships. But if you're an addict, and it will corrupt those other things eventually. Your marriage and your family will go away. Your emotions will become uncontrolled. Your spiritual life will deteriorate, and you will be focused just on your addiction. So in that particular case, I would agree. Same thing emotionally. If your emotional balance is starting to be out of balance, it's going to hurt those things too. And so, yes, it can be corrupting.
In our society, in the era that I've grown up in, I'm 40 now, particularly the 90s, early 2000s, with, there's some kind of milestone moments that sort of slowly have changed things. But it was a mostly peaceful experience, positive and peaceful. And I think a lot of times we can attribute our goodness to ourselves when it's the context we're in. And if we had been in a different context, we might not be as good as we think we are. So what would you say about that dynamic?
I think we have images of what environment is. And I don't want to downplay that there aren't positive elements of good environment. But I have seen people overcome the worst environments you could possibly imagine. In fact, I don't believe you can imagine them. Unless you've been exposed to them, I don't believe you can imagine them. And they've overcome them. Now, how? It's not just luck. It's not just luck. It's being integrated. It's having hope. It's having a support system, that relational support system that helps at the right time in the right way. Because all of us, let me put it this way, none of us is built to solve every problem. There's just you think you can, but none of us is built to solve every problem. And so having those relational factors in your life to be held accountable, to support, to be a cheerleader or to be a butt kicker sometimes. And I do believe that there are certain circumstances that are just so horrific that it doesn't surprise me that someone is in the worst situation. They were dealt the worst hand from day one as a kid in ways that, again, unless you've been exposed to it, you cannot imagine it. And it is no wonder that just to stop the pain of the memories, they become addicted, right? And so we can't downplay that at all. It's not just like, hey, buck up and, try harder. That's not true, right? But we have to recognize that, and there is hope. There is redemption. There is the ability to slowly move away from that.
Yeah.
Are you a small business owner? Have you hit a glass ceiling where year over year, you cannot rise above a certain revenue level? Check out Jason Scott Montoya's book, The Jump, to discover how to level up your leadership and pivot your entrepreneurial passion to the highest level.